KETV Newswatch 7, chronicling the stories impacting our community. Stories making a difference. Stories that matter to you. This is KETV Newswatch 7's Chronicle.
If you have all this dissension, it's harder to move hard bills forward. And I think that was where I was concerned, but I hadn't seen it yet, but it was a possibility. I frankly think the special investigator will actually will take that attention, he can work it, so we can get back on the agenda that we were elected to do.
Well, it's been a bit of a challenge recently for freshman Congressman Don Bacon and his colleagues in Washington. Just last week, the House Intelligence Committee issued subpoenas for several individuals connected to the Trump administration. Good morning. I'm David Earl, and this is KETV Newswatch 7's Chronicle. Joining us today is Nebraska's freshman Republican Congressman General Don Bacon, who's actually been quite busy during his first several months in office, co-sponsoring several bills aimed at helping veterans, among them reforms to the VA management structure, improving veterans care, and providing service member support. Congressman Bacon, welcome. Thanks for being here with us this morning. So after 100 days in office, President Donald Trump famously said being president is harder than he imagined. How about being congressman? Is it harder than you thought it was going to be?
I think it's about what I expected. I mean, I was a political science major. I was reading National Review, for example, as a junior high kid. I interned for a congressman at 20. And did 30 years in the Air Force, roughly, 2 assignments in Washington, where I got to watch it a little bit. Then I worked for Congressman Fortenberry for a little bit after. So it's about what I expected. It's hard work, but it's also fun work at the same time.
You were initially reluctant to have some of those town hall meetings that have made the news. What changed your mind there?
Well, first of all, I did commit to doing it, and I'm a person of my word. So we were always going to do it. It was a matter of really the timing, and I wasn't interested in doing it in February when I was watching some of the other town halls throughout the country where we had one congressman actually escorted off for safety reasons. Mm-hmm. So I think I needed a little time to study what was going on and how to best accommodate and do this right. In the end, we want to give people that agree and disagree a chance to voice that and to hear what people are thinking. I think we found the right balance. We did 5 in 3 weeks. I'm proud of it.
What's been your biggest takeaway from those as you've had those conversations with constituents?
Well, I think like on the health care bill, it's not just one issue. There's 4 or 5 different issues. So I think when you hear the concerns, pro or con, it's a multifaceted part of the bill. You have Medicaid portion, you have the individual market portion, you have the employer-provided portion. So I think it expands the context of the issues there, which is good. But I think one of the things I really gained from the town halls were issues that I've not even voted on yet. Mm-hmm. And it was, looking forward, like folks asked me, what about smokeless tobacco or the just issues that we haven't voted on yet that I haven't really looked at closely. So it probably pushed me to study some issues that were coming our way, and so it helped in that way for sure.
Yeah. Do you see politics becoming more partisan, less civil, more angry? I know that's been a real. You see the stuff that makes the news, right? It's always those contentious town halls. What do you make of that? Has it become less civil?
I think absolutely yes.
Yeah.
It's not just been though since Donald Trump's inauguration. I think this crescendo's been growing, I believe, for a while. And I think we got to do better than this. But this isn't the only time in history for us that we've had this. I mean, I love studying history. And if you look at Adams and Jefferson,
right, very
contentious. Andrew Jackson, that era was very contentious. And we got by it. But then you look pre-Civil War era, we didn't without a Civil War. I just think we need to raise the bar. We're Americans first. We have so much to be proud of our country. And we need to know what unites us more than divides us. And it's hard to disagree on some fundamental issues, but we can't let it become that full of rancor that we see. We need to hold a higher bar how we talk to each other. The screaming and shouting, the character assassination, I think it's not healthy.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid we're pulling apart at the fabric. And my goal is to handle myself in a civil way. I've pledged to do it in Congress. And I just think it's hard to disagree, but we can do it in a respectful way, because in the end, we're Americans first.
Right.
We can't forget that.
Let's talk about that civility pledge. So Greg Gianforte is going to join you as a colleague.
Right.
He's facing a misdemeanor assault charge in Montana now for an interaction he had with a reporter. Is he the kind of person that you need to reach out to and say, we've got this civility pledge, this is how we're going to conduct business? Is he a candidate for that? Would you want him to sign that?
I look forward to seeing him probably on Tuesday, coming up, maybe Tuesday evenings, probably when I will first meet him. And I would encourage him to join the freshmen in that pledge. And I bet you he would want to do it. And he apologized for that. And I think that's a good start. When you do something wrong, you apologize and try to make it right.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your legislative agenda here. Do you feel like you've accomplished a lot in the first 6 months on the job?
Yes, but I think I'd like to have done more.
Yeah.
It does go slower, and it's just the way Madison designed it when he wrote the Constitution. He talks about this in the Federalist Papers. That's meant to have ambition countering ambition, and I see that. But where we've made progress, we've done a lot of regulatory reform, which will help out our farmers, our small business. I think we had executive overreach in the last 8 years, where people were, instead of executing laws, they were writing laws. Congress is supposed to write laws, then the executive branch execute them. So we've made progress there. Some major regulatory reform bills. We are starting to get our military healthy now. We've just put in $20 billion to help get them back on their feet. The military had a 17% reduction in the last 8 years with a lot of continuing resolutions while we're fighting a war. And the readiness in the military was in terrible shape. I'll give you one stat. Half of the Navy aircraft cannot fly on any given day. That's unacceptable. So I think we've made progress there. I think we've made progress with the health care bill. Now it's in the Senate, so we got work to do there still. What we'd like to have already done, we'd like to have already worked on Dodd-Frank revision, some changes to the Dodd-Frank bill and how we're regulating banking and our credit unions, and also tax reform. We got to get tax reform done if we want to get our economy growing to 3% of GDP or 3% of GDP. That's where we'd like to be right now, but we got more work to do to get there.
I've heard a lot of economists talk about 3% GDP growth and how it may be a bit ambitious. How do you think you get there?
Well, we have a lot of history where we're at 3%, 4%, and 5% GDP, and it's a combination of getting the regulatory burden off of our small businesses, because they're really the engine of our economy, and our farmers. We do need to do tax reform. Now, a lot of our corporations in Nebraska are paying over 30% corporate tax, but if you go to Canada, it's 15%, Ireland 12%, Great Britain's going to 17%. The average in Europe is 22%. And it's hard to ask our businesses to compete with a extra weight on their back. It's like, say, we're going to run a marathon, but we're going to put 20 pounds of chains on your back. Good luck.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing to our business community. So we need to do tax reform and regulatory reform, and frankly, healthcare reform is important because businesses are paying so much for health insurance for their employees, so we got to find a way to lower those costs. Those three things together, if we can get our arms around it, I believe can get us to 3% GDP growth.
Let's talk about an issue near and dear to your heart, a lot of that veterans legislation. Can you tell us where some of those bills stand right now that you have sponsored or co-sponsored? Well,
so far we have 3 bills that we have passed. We've passed a lot more out of the House. Got to get them through the Senate yet. They operate at a little bit different speed, I've learned. We're running as hard as we can. They're a little more at a slower pace.
Right.
But what we did do is we've given the VA the ability to hire folks more easily. And I come through as an Air Force guy for 30 years, it takes too long to hire civilians that you want to hire. And so we're trying to simplify that, and we got that passed. We've also made it easier to hold people accountable who are not performing well in the VA. Frankly, we need to do that for the entire federal government. It shouldn't just be the VA. I've seen it in the military as well.
Yeah.
Then we also extended the CHOICE Act that allows veterans who live farther away from the VA to see a local clinic near their home. And that expired, so we extended that. But we have more work to do.
Let's talk about President Trump's decision to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement. Do you feel like that's the right move?
Yeah, I'll give you an in-between answer on that. I feel like we need a seat at the table, and since some of these standards that we agreed to under President Obama, we can change them if we wanted. They're volunteer. I think we could have gone in and say, hey, we don't agree with this level or that level. I think we've gone in there and made some changes that we wanted to make. But I think where we failed in the previous administration, the president did that on his own and did an executive mandate, basically. I think these things work best when you go to Congress as a president and you find a bipartisan agreement on how to go forward on this. So I feel like we need to do this as a team and not just as a Republican or Democrat president, which is what we're doing. So to answer your question, I think that some of the things were not helping us out economically.
Sure.
So let's go in and make the change and say this is what we're going to do since they're voluntary already.
Yeah, you're a military guy. The military has been kind of vocal in climate change, basically, not from an environmental standpoint, but if the climate continues to change in some of these places around the world, we're going to see more and more discord. There will be more and more conflicts.
Right.
Is that perhaps the right way to be approaching the issue of climate change, not from an environmental aspect, but from a national security aspect?
Well, there are some aspects. If you have some countries that are fighting for water, that creates a lot of tension. We see it in the Middle East already. And we have some areas where I know some bases on the coast that flood more easily than they did, say, 20, 30 years ago. But I think, from my perspective, why I support continuing to get better is we want clean air, we want clean water. I can't say if I put this amount of money that we're going to be able to lower the temperature here and there. I don't have that level of confidence of what it's going to take to impact the increase in temperatures. But what I do know is I want clean air and clean water, and we should continually try to get better for our environment, for our kids and grandkids. So I look at it more practical. What can we continue to do to get better so that our kids and grandkids have a cleaner planet?
Yeah. One of the reports that had come out of Europe, the Chinese Premier Xi Jinping had gone over to Germany and was meeting with Angela Merkel, and basically they had recommitted their support to the Paris Agreement, and now withdrawing from it leaves us, I think, in a category with Nicaragua and Syria. I mean, is that a place for American leadership going forward?
I think if the president would have come in and said, the previous president agreed to these various standards, I want to modify these standards here because I think that this is the right balance for our economy and the environment, I would have recommended that as a better way forward. But the problem is we're having presidents do this without Congress, and Congress, we represent the will of the people, you know, in 435 seats, 435 districts. The previous president did it arbitrarily, and I think this president would also be better served saying, this is what I recommend, and come to Congress and get, you know, a bipartisan agreement with that. It may not be everything he wants. I think if President Obama did this, it wouldn't have been everything he wanted.
Right.
But in the end, you get agreement, and you don't have this back and forth with each new administration.
Well, it does. It comes back to bipartisanship with any issue, right? I mean, it seems as if we're moving to a place now where Democrats want one thing, Republicans want another, and we get this knee-jerk reaction depending on who's in power instead of the bipartisan approach where there's just give and take involved with every issue.
So I think the failure of the previous administration on the Paris Agreement, they made this agreement and said this is the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
They should have come to Congress, and that means probably there would have been some changes to get agreement. It would involve having the Republican leadership involved with President Obama. But if you would have got that agreement, you wouldn't have this back and forth. And so I recommend, you know, our current president try to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Work with Congress, find a middle ground on these agreements, because in the end, treaties are supposed to involve Congress. Granted, this is an agreement, but I think this is why you want both branches involved.
I know this is a deep issue. We could spend a lot of time on it. How do you get that bipartisanship back in Washington?
I think you make an effort. You get on the telephone, you call, you have meetings. For example, our freshman class, we went to the Holocaust Museum together. We meet regularly. I think an area that I see promise in bipartisanship, at least in the freshman class, we have about 53 of us or 54 of us. I think if you count the new congressman from Montana, numbers can get changed a little bit there. But I think immigration's an area when we talk as a group, Republicans, Democrats, we see a lot of common ground. But you don't do that without talking. So I think it used to be under Ronald Reagan, he would call Tip O'Neill and they would play golf or have a scotch at night. We probably need a little more of that in Washington and a little less. You could put people behind the microphone and you get all the rancor.
Right.
You need to do more behind closed doors.
All right, Congressman, we have to take a quick break, but we're going to continue our conversation with Congressman Don Bacon in just 90 seconds. You're watching KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle. Welcome back to KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle. This morning we're talking with Republican Congressman Don Bacon, who's been commuting back and forth between Washington and Nebraska for almost 6 months now. So, Congressman, we'll ask you this. Why not just stay in D.C. when you guys are in session instead of coming back and forth?
Yeah, that used to be the habit, you know, probably 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But now most of us fly back every weekend, which I enjoy doing. I like seeing my family for starters.
Yeah.
But this is my second week back since 3 January. And I have to admit, I've enjoyed this week. I just even listen to the talk show radio in the morning. I said, I'm back home.
Yeah.
So it's good to be back.
Well, it keeps you kind of in touch more with your congressional district,
So
right?
I typically get home on either a Thursday night or Friday night, go back on a Monday morning.
Yeah.
That's the norm. Come back every weekend.
All right. Well, let's talk to you about threats facing the country right now. What do you think is the biggest threat facing America right now?
Well, I think the nearest term threat, but not existential to our survival is ISIS and Al-Qaeda, where they will attack, whether it's embassies or lone wolf attacks here in our own country. That's not existential to our country, though. But so I think big term in the long run, I do worry about North Korea. They have at least 10 nuclear weapons, and they're trying to build missile technology to reach our country. And the Kim Jong-un, the leader, he's the grandson of a dictator, a son of a dictator. He's never been told no in his life. And I don't find him to be a very sane leader. And so we have to be concerned with that, because he's a guy with nuclear weapons. He killed his uncle, who was a general. He killed another general who fell asleep at a staff meeting. Killed his girlfriend because his wife was jealous. Killed his half-brother. So we have to be, I think we need a strong enough force in that region to be a deterrent that he knows what will happen if he crosses the line. But there's a lot of threats out there. I think Iran's a long-term threat. Russia is treating its neighbors in a way that really scares Poland, the Baltics, and so we need to be a reassuring presence with those countries. So I wish there was just one. There's a handful.
Well, let's circle back to North Korea. We had that missile intercept test that worked perfectly under ideal conditions. Right. Are you confident that that is a system that will be able to protect America should an enemy missile come in our direction?
I think eventually, yes. We have to continue working on missile defense technology. We have pretty good technology for shorter range missiles that are fired at us, but intercontinental's it's a harder problem to solve. I think we have to continue working on it. But what I've learned, and I did missile defense in Israel when I was a colonel, other countries can produce more missiles to strike than we can to intercept with missile defense. So you have to have some missile defense capabilities, but in the end you need a deterrent capability so they know that you can strike back, whether it's your aircraft or your own missiles as a deterrent. So I don't think in the end you can produce enough interceptors to do the job in missile defense. You got to have other means to hold them in check.
Yeah. You talked about Russia, too, as being kind of an existential threat. I think it was this last week where the French president stood next to Vladimir Putin and really kind of denounced him and his actions in meddling with elections around the world. The president of the United States invited the Russian ambassador into the Oval Office, and they seemed to not have broached the topic of election meddling. What do you think that signal that sends to Europe?
Well, I think that we need to be pretty clear with Putin and the Russians, but we need to be honest with our own people. What happened was we knew that what Russia was doing last summer, but we didn't really talk about it until after the election. And I think the Americans needed to know that the Russians were trying to undermine the confidence of our elections, and we have a partisan divide. And what they were doing is they were throwing gas on the fire, and it's worked. And I think we have to have that honest dialogue. Don't let the Russians do what they're trying to do, and we're actually playing into their hands. But they did the same thing with France. They're trying to do this. They did the same thing with Germany. They will do the same thing with Great Britain. And I think we just have to have some candor. This is their goal, to undermine our election. So they're getting what they want out of all this partisan rancor, and they fed the fire.
Yeah. What do you make of the firing of Jim Comey? I know you and I have talked about that a little bit after that happened initially. He's supposed to testify in front of Congress now on June 8th. What do you anticipate will be revealed there?
I think we'll hear what he's already said, that he, with a note that the president was hoping to maybe have Flynn not be investigated. We'll hear what the context of that discussion was.
Sure.
But about Comey himself, I found him to be a principled person. In fact, he was so principled he irritated both parties since last July. But what I did find since 3rd of January, where I'd see him come in and speak to the Congress, or to the House side anyway, that he was not highly regarded by the Democrat side for sure. They were very harsh on him when he came visited. But also on the Republican side, it was the same way. I walked away with the feeling that he didn't have a lot of support from both parties, and it was time to get someone in that had the confidence of more government. So I hope what we need to do is get an FBI director that does have the confidence of both parties, and I think he had lost it. Now, the way it was done, it's not right to fire someone over the news.
Yeah.
You need to call them and tell them personally, and that didn't happen.
What do you make of a character like Julian Assange in the world? WikiLeaks has played a large role in not only our own election, but in intelligence leaking around the world. Is he doing citizens a service or a disservice?
I think he's doing us a disservice. He has leaked information. It's not really his, I don't blame him as much as the people within our government that is leaked to them. Now, I know the Russians have also stolen data and fed that way, is what we hear. But when our own people take top secret information on how we're collecting against ISIS and Al-Qaeda and giving it to him, that undermines our security. So I think he has done a disservice to us, because it's undermined our ability to track ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And we have to be honest about it. This is what's happened.
Yeah. Is WikiLeaks a tool of Russian intelligence? That's been the claim of some people in politics. That's
what I understand as well, that the Russians have taken some data and fed it that direction. But it's not just the Russians. There have been other folks from within our own government. Some have done jail time to do it, and fed them data. I just think we should realize that that data has undermined our security.
Yeah. Congressman, thank you. It's time to take a short break again, but first, a reminder that your comments are important and an important part of the show. After we talked with the Vietnam veterans who traveled to Washington, D.C. to see the memorial wall there, we received several messages, including this one, which thanked us for our coverage, saying, quote, "It was an awesome day for these veterans." Robert Mather also thanked us for covering the event and wrote, quote, "It was a day they will never forget." Megan Glover shared that sentiment, sending us this message. With so much negativity surrounding our current events in recent months, it's so refreshing to see such positivity and healing in our community. I was at the airport welcoming these heroes home, and it was an experience I will never forget. If you want to be heard, email your comments to news@ketv.com. Remember, we love hearing from you. We'll be right back. You're watching KETV News Watch 7's Chronicle. This morning we've been talking with first-term Republican Congressman Don Bacon. We have just a few minutes left here. Congressman, are you planning to run for re-election?
I haven't announced officially yet, but I'm going to do the very best I can, and I hope to be here next cycle, but I'll let you know when we do a public announcement.
Okay. There's been a lot of talk. There's a Democrat already in the race car. Eastman has said she wants to run. There's been some talk of Ashford's running as well. Does that concern you at all?
Not really. First of all, this is, I'm a freshman, and I took a seat from an incumbent Democrat. In fact, the only incumbent Democrat defeated last cycle in the House or the Senate. So I would expect this will be a competitive race. But my job is to do the best I can, and I still have work to do. And I think if we get it done, we'll not have a problem. And so the next thing is Dodd-Frank revisions and tax reform. And if we deliver on the promises that I ran on, I feel good about what we're doing.
Yeah. What surprised you the most about the job?
Well, I average 6 miles a day walking, and that's without a workout. If I work out, it's about 11 miles. Throw it in there. I find most people, like the way we're talking right now, are very friendly on both sides of the aisle, and so there's been no tension one-on-one or in small groups. But it is interesting to see when you get folks behind a microphone how that dynamic changes. I just think we got to work more behind the scenes to get things done.
What's been your biggest learning curve?
Well, you get 5 to 6 bills a day that you vote on. Plus, I do 3 committee hearings typically every day. Plus, you have 4 or 5 constituent groups coming in, and trying to balance that, make sure that you've researched every bill, because you want to read every bill before you vote on it, to know what you're going to talk about in all 3 committee hearings, and to be prepared for everybody coming in. So it's about a 14-hour a day, and I am lucky if I get 15 minutes off in the middle of that. There's days I'm walking from one place to another. You're eating a hot dog.
Right. I'll ask you real quickly before we go. What's been harder, do you think, being a congressman or being a general?
That's a hard one to answer. I think the pace is the same. As a commander at Ramstein Air Base in Germany and at Offutt, I feel like the pace is similar, and you have to be willing to change topics about every hour and be quick to adjust whatever the issue is. And I feel like that's the same for both, like being a congressman and general. I would say the difference I have found is being a general, 99% of the folks like what you're doing, typically, if not more, if you're working hard and you're doing a good job. Here, you're working hard to get 51, 52%. So it's a little bit different dynamic of politics, because there's a lot more fire coming from both sides.
Yeah, Congressman, thanks so much for being here with us this morning. That'll do it for Chronicle.